who's joining us now. Janet Porter, thank you so much for joining us. Again, you are the spokeswoman for the More campaign. Let's get right to the question. Why do you believe that the Alabama Secretary of State at the 11th hour is going to take the evidence that you put in this court document, much of which alleges voter irregularities that he's already dismissed, that he will change his mind now?
Well, there's two reasons. By the way, it's not just Judge Moore on this case. It's actually voters of Alabama that are also listed as plaintiffs on the case. And it's his job to follow the Supreme Court ruling that makes sure that every vote is cast, that we know that it's counted accurately. And when we have evidence of fraud from three, and yes, they are experts. One gentleman has 3 degrees in mathematics. He's written 4 books on election fraud, and he confirms that there's enough votes, enough fraud that took place in just one county to change the outcome of this election. It is the job of John Merrill to make sure that the elections are free and proper and that they're fair. And this is something that people who care about fair and free elections should call the Secretary of State at 334-242-7200 and let him know we don't want you to certify a fraudulent vote. Investigate it. If you think Doug Jones won, well, let's make sure of it. Let's make sure we get to the bottom of what these experts says is clear evidence of fraud. In fact, this gentleman that I talked about with all of the degrees, he said there is a 1 in 15 billion chance that this vote that happened in 20 precincts in Jefferson County occurred naturally. In other words, this election was fraudulent, and what we need to do is ask the Secretary of State to do his job and to investigate this.
What's the name of the expert that you're referring to?
His name is Richard Charnin, and as I mentioned, 3 degrees of mathematics. He's written 4 books on election fraud. He's a national expert, and he concurs with the other independent experts. And by the way, when I talked to one of the researchers, he's a Democrat. He says this is not about the candidates. It's not about whether it's Republican or Democrat. It's about fair and free elections. He said, I got involved in election integrity because I felt that Bernie Sanders was being cheated. And so this is not about Republican or Democrat.
Okay,
it's about fair and free election.
There's another expert that you rely on in this court filing named James Condit Jr. He is somebody who has spoken about Zionist control of world politics, an alleged Israeli role in 9/11 and the terrorist attacks, and other things, including. Hold on, let me finish.
I don't vouch for everybody's opinion on everything.
I can ask the questions, and then you can answer. Stand by. I'm not done.
All right.
Because he also claims that he has mathematically proven a conspiracy behind the assassination of John F. Kennedy. The reason I bring this up is because this does not sound like somebody who is has credible information and credible enough ability to be an expert to say that Roy Moore should be elected to the Senate.
May I respond? Okay, it's interesting you're not talking about Richard Charnin, whose impeccable credentials are off the charts. John Condit, the thing that he admitted into the court had to do with the voting machines. Because we need transparent and open elections. To follow what the Supreme Court has said, that we need to know that our vote was properly counted. What happens is you've got this private company out of Omaha, Nebraska, that has all the votes in the voter images, and no one's allowed to see them. That is a violation of federal law and the Constitution.
But if you're trying to show that something irregularities, why use conspiracy theorists to try to prove that point?
Not everybody.
I
could probably find some anchors on CNN that have some pretty crazy radical ideas, but that's really not what this is about. His expertise is on the voting machines,
they're not trying to endorse in a court of law.
And he's very well qualified on that issue.
The idea that Roy Moore should have been elected.
Look, it's not about who's elected. It's about making sure the people of Alabama have the right to make that decision. And John Merrill's job, and by the way, Secretary of State John Merrill has been on the wrong side of federal law when he says, he's arguing before the Alabama Supreme Court, that we should destroy the ballot images. In other words, we should destroy the evidence and make sure that nobody has a chance to look at this. That's very suspect, and that's why I think people should be calling John Merrill 334-242-7200. If you want fair and free elections, don't certify what 3 independent experts, and I'm not listing John Condit as one of them, by the way, but I think he is an expert on voting machines, and what he says is valid. But on the issue of what 3 independent experts says, that there is fraud enough in just one county to turn this thing around, and if I was Secretary of State, boy, I'd like to get to the bottom of it no matter who it is that I supported. Because here's the thing that Governor Ivey needs to know. She's up for a re-election, too, and there's 650,000 people who are watching this very closely, what they do right now, and if they certify certify what has been proven by 3 independent experts that says this is fraudulent enough to overturn this entire election, then they're going to be accountable at the voting booth. And I wouldn't want to be. And by the way, if they can steal the election from Roy Moore, Governor Ivey, they can steal it from you. Or Secretary of State Merrill, it can happen to you. That's why voter integrity matters no matter where you stand.